Hello and welcome to The Price of Time, the show where we explore the defining moments that made people who they are today and the impact of those moments over time. Here's your host, Luke Tatum. Hello again and welcome back to The Price of Time. My name is Luke Tatum. I'll be your host today. As always, today's guest is Nick Pecone. Nick is the founder of Iron Age Marketing and the author of the upcoming book, The Role Player's Guide to Marketing. He does marketing, PR, and video editing for all of my various enterprises. He's been a very good friend of mine for many years now. Nick, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me there, Luke.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I can't wait to have another good conversation. We've been on each other's podcasts multiple different times over the years. You know, we've got a long
history. Decade of it at least.
And every time I talk to you, man, you've always like, I feel like 20 years in the future, I'm still going to be hearing new things from you, you know, like always very, very interesting stuff that we get to talk about. So
what's more fascinating about that is that now we have weekly meetings for business stuff and I still come up with stuff to talk about somehow.
Somehow, man, you've got a lot of stuff. You've got a very rich and storied background. So I'm excited to get into some new things today that I didn't know about you. And, you know, it's going to be a good time. So why don't you start, if you would, by kind of telling me what we're going to talk about today. So, you know, if you're first time watching the show, we're always going to start the episode with a defining moment in your life. Now, I know you have something in mind. So what are we going to talk about?
Well, it's not the moment that you pitched the show to me and said, hey, I got an idea for a podcast where we just talk about important moments. But I did immediately think of a moment. Like you pitched that and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I would talk about if I were on that show. And even though it's been a couple months, that still hasn't changed. I've always kind of considered myself somebody who I like who I am. I don't have a lot to go back and change in my life. But, you know, it's part of that whole whatever road made you who you are, you don't want to change because you're still who you are. And if you have any kind of self-esteem at all, you know, you kind of like who you are. But there is one thing, if I could change any single detail in my life, it is I would take that moment that I read Influence by Robert Cialdini and move it back into high school. And I know that seems like a weird thing. Like, I guess as a guy who's into marketing and really into that, you'd think it has more to do with like business and, oh, you know, done so many things. But the truth of the matter is reading through that book actually changed my life, say at like a spiritual, emotional level. Like when you start getting into the psychology of human behavior, one of the things that becomes very apparent is how hardwired we are to certain actions and the ways in which we react to certain things. And I bring this up in the intro to my book, The Role Player's Guide to Marketing, as I'm trying to explain, like, I've always kind of thought myself as like the affable, the lovable loser guy. You know, I grew up listening to The Offspring and Green Day, and then I saw the movie Angus, and oh man, it kind of internalized into me that, you know, I'm a nice guy, but you know, things just never quite work out. And I never realized how much baggage there was with that, you know. Of course, the kid that plays Dungeons and Dragons doesn't get to have the life that he wants. He doesn't go out and make millions. He doesn't go and do anything. You know, he's not what you think of as a success. He's just the guy that gets along to get along, you know. And, you know, when you look back at your life through the lens of someone who doesn't have the psychological background that, like, you pick up through the book, it's easy to interpret your life that way. Well, you know, that really pretty girl didn't go out with me. It's because I'm a loser. This thing that I really wanted to happen didn't happen because I'm a loser. But when you go back and you look at it and you're like, well, no, those things didn't happen because I wasn't selling myself properly. I wasn't allowing perception of myself. I wasn't dealing with the psychology that people are going to have of the way that I portray myself. And more importantly, like, I didn't perhaps care about myself enough to, you know, well, I'm not somebody who puts on airs, but you don't put on airs for you. Put on at them. You put on airs for you. It's a tactic. It's a way to be perceived in the way that you want to see you get what you want. And prior to reading that book, like I got to look at myself, as that lovable loser who's trying really hard but never quite gets things done. And when I came away from it, it's like, you know what? Like everything that I feel like has been messed up in my life, I can't put that on anyone else. It's because I've been working from an improper foundation as to how human beings work and allowed myself to do all the wrong things to, get what I want out of life. And I'm not going to say since I've read that book, I've been perfect about everything, and like I'm, the most type A personality you've ever met. I still have my foibles to some degree, but I now get to take ownership of my foibles. I now get to contextualize them in a way that I don't have to feel guilty about. It's okay, well, I made a choice and the choice led to this. But I always can make different choices. There's always going to be new opportunities. It's, you start taking on that sales mentality of, it's just another number. Every no is on the way to a yes, that kind of thing. And it's just such a liberating way to look at life. And so while I consider myself, I like who I am, the only thing I wish I could do different is if I could put that book in the hands of 15-year-old me and start all this recontextualization back, 25 years earlier. Yeah, all of the opportunities that I could have convinced myself, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and God darn it, people like you. So go ahead and take that opportunity. And if it doesn't work out, look for the next opportunity.
Right. So were you playing Dungeons and Dragons in high school or like before high school or?
I remember the very first time I read a Dungeons and Dragons book. We were on the way back from Corning Glass on a school field trip. And I talked to this guy, Chris Armstrong. Good guy. We've been talking since a couple elections ago, but he was reading this book and had dragons and wizards on the cover of it. I think it was probably the second edition player's handbook. And I'm like, dude, that looks really cool. And so he's like, this is, I think, 8th grade. And he's like, well, you want to take it and read it, man? You can play with us. Because every D&D kid just wants more people to play with. That's the whole goal. And so I took it. And I think I brought the book back the next day. I'm like, yeah, man, that was cool. You got any more of those books? And he's like, just looked at me kind of weird. Like, you're done with it? I'm like, yeah. And so then he hands me the Dungeon Master guide and said, you want to be the DM? here's more books for you to read. But it's what I was just getting. It's part of this contextualization. I built up through like the media that I was consuming, that I was letting program me, that, oh, he's the Dungeons and Dragons kid. We know what those kids do. They're never popular. They're never the cool kids. They're never a lot of different things. I remember sitting outside of the roller rink at some point in this, age bracket, and they're blasting Self-Esteem by The Offspring and just my little burgeoning emo heart just taking in all the anger and angst and just cultivating this sense of me that now I look at I still love Dungeons and Dragons, but I don't need to carry all that other crap with me. That's whatever. That's Dungeons and Dragons. People can be whoever I want a Dungeons and Dragons person to be. It doesn't have to be that guy along with all of this.
And I know that you and I share a lot of the same, kind of views on some of these things, right? Like we've both read that book, Influence. It's a wonderful book. There's lots of wonderful things. Again, I think about examples from that book, like the J.C. Penney story from that book is a really, really, really good thing that I bring up a lot in conversation, like with my team and stuff. And so, very, very powerful stuff. And this whole idea of like a package deal. I mean, you were talking about not talking to this guy, for a couple of election cycles, right? And it's like, what is politics? It's this whole package deal thing. It's like, well, you're going to vote for, choice A or choice B, and choice A is not just the one issue you care about. It's issue B, C, D, E, all the way down the list. It's all this stuff, and you're gonna get the whole thing regardless of how many of those you like.
It's
And
the
so,
team sports thing.
right, right. And so similarly, right? I mean, it's, I speaking of identity and some of that stuff, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that would seem to be contradictory on my world too, right? Like we live in the middle of nowhere and we've got chickens and live on some land, and I'm a computer game nerd, and I'm a finance guy, and like, I like metal, and
If only more finance guys were like Luke. That's what I tell people.
I mean, I just, like I never wanted to get into finance, and I was self-sabotaging myself probably for years, thinking, that's not an area I want to be in. And I had the same negative thoughts about like what finance people are that a lot of people have, finance guys are just trying to make a quick buck and take advantage of people and stuff. And so I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be a good person. And to me, I'm like, well, I can't be a good person and go into finance, right? Like those don't work together, right? And so the amount of damage you can do to your own prospects is, I mean, profound, right? I mean, I'm rambling now, but
Well, no, but it's like, you have this idea built in your head, your psyche, that this is what a finance person is, and you think Wall Street, you think, oh, tacos are for closers or whatever you want to say, and you get it in your head that like you're just out there to make a quick buck. The bottom line is we both come from like the Austrian economic school of thought, and I think that is certainly liberating in its own way. Like that could have been another moment for me, the moment I discovered that. It's like, oh, I've always looked at myself as being a lefty politically, but like, man, this economics means all the stuff that I've always wanted to happen, and the way that I thought I was going to get there is completely wrong. So, when you start thinking about the package deals, these little paradigm shifts, like, that, well, maybe I don't have to. Maybe the best way to go out and make money is to help people and do good for people. That's, and if you look in the long term, the people that do that definitely do the best financially, unless, there's graft involved in government and things like that.
No, but the core principles are yeah. I mean, you've got to do what's right by other people. You've got to look out for their best interest. And there's a book. I wasn't super impressed with the book itself, but the title is great. It's "What's in It for Them" by Joe Polish. Pretty quick. Yeah, yeah, and a lot of it's just like stuff I'd already absorbed from other sources, and so it's like, okay, that was a good book, but that's not what I needed at the time. But yeah, what's in it for them, right? Like, quit thinking about yourself, quit thinking about what, sales you want to make, quit thinking about, your income goals or whatever. Just help people.
What do the best salesmen do, Luke? And this in marketing, sales, whatever you're doing, which end of it, the questions that you're always going to answer are the ones that you get from them. Like, it's not what you want to do; it's what they need. It's how do I get this thing for them? It's I actually just shared a meme that one of my guests on my podcast, the RNA's Marketing Podcast, shared. And it's 8 seconds long, but it encapsulates everything. It's like, if you want to make money, go out and do something that somebody is willing to pay you for. Help them make money, and they will pay you money. That's how you make money. Period.
Yep.
No matter what you're doing, that's always it. Yeah, we what's our usual conversation every Friday? It's like, dude, as soon as we start making more money, then I can pay you more money.
Yeah, I mean, because like, I mean, you do great work. I want to pay you money, so how do we make that happen? It's just, it shouldn't be that hard. And I think a lot of times, and I know we're just getting into random different, topics here, but I think a lot of times this is very challenging for people to see, because they're kind of brought up in this get a good education so you can get a high paying job at a big corporation kind of like flow. That's what they're taught to do. And it's not really that's not really the best way. I mean, yeah, you can earn a high income working for a corporation. You could be the CFO or something, and you can get a high.
Can you really today? So a lot of those positions open. Maybe there was that back in the 70s, and I wasn't around to tell you yay or nay. But what I can tell you right now is, dude, look around us right now. Companies are laying off left and right, and I have to assume that at least part of that is due to the fact that nobody trusts companies. These too big to fail businesses have taken advantage of people. Like we're looking at news talking about the Disney Corporation now, where their movies are being tanked by YouTubers with like the same camera I'm using. It's like under $100, living in like apartments. There's something going wrong in the marketplace when the Disney Corporation can't make $1 billion on a movie because they've spurned their customers so badly. It's so one of the reasons I came out, with Harney's marketing, because it's, this whole idea of corporatism. I think everyone's just kind of done with it, and they're gonna hang on to the last gasp they have. But the bottom line is, people want to deal with people. People want to feel like they can trust somebody, and there's just no trust left in that environment anymore. It's much easier for you to come to me than to go to some guy who's can make all the promises in the world. You don't know the guy who's actually doing any of the work for you. You don't know enough to, they're not going to educate you enough, because then you could go find someone else to go find work. Whereas, like, I want everything I do, I want to be a collaboration. I want to be a team. Like when we used to be in a thing called the Libertarian Union. It was a bunch of podcasters, and what was our motto was always, rising tide lifts all ships. Because certainly for you and me, it's always been a matter of the relationships, the people around us. We want to do better for them, because it's only better for me if everyone around me does better. It's the best way to serve yourself is to serve others. And that was, I guess, one of the things that I kind of took away from Cialdini that I don't know how many other people get, but it was the idea that on a long enough time scale, helping people is always better than taking advantage of people.
Right. Yeah, if you're burning bridges, then you're eventually going to run out of bridges to burn, right? I mean, and this is a story I probably shouldn't go into in detail, but like there's a guy in this area where we live now that's basically his tale. He moved to some other state because everybody around here eventually knew that guy's not worth talking to. Like, he's going to rip you off. You're going to go do some contract work for him, and he's not going to pay you because he's going to make up some reason why it's not good enough. Like all this kind of stuff that just, it will catch up to you, right? It's like, do the right thing when you're dealing with people, or you're going to run out of people to deal with.
Well, I'm pretty sure that what do they always say in sales? Who's your best customer? It's the person who's already bought from you. Well, if you're screwing everybody over, they're not going to be buying back from you. So you're undermining your best customer every time you're doing that.
That's right. So tell me, like, Cialdini, right? So you read his book, and what started to change in your life?
I mean, it's supposed to say this is a slow change, but maybe it was just a little bit of self-esteem, or maybe a little bit of a desire to fake it until I made it. But the idea that I needed to have my life be on my own terms to some degree, and I needed to approach life from a more positive angle, because clearly there was no value anymore in looking at it negatively. It forced me to take ownership. And the minute you start taking ownership of things and you start looking at, well, what could I have done different to change any number of things in my life? Well, then you start taking your decisions more seriously moving forward. Like you can't look at a decision and like just, brush it off. You have to look at it as, what should I be doing here to reach my goals? What should I be doing here to get the outcome I want? And, we're not omnipotent, so I can't say like I make all those choices correct, but like I certainly feel like I've done better in the clutch since that. Like when I would have been at that point in time, I was reading that I was working a full-time job, working on air pumps, and vacuum cleaners and ATMs and jukeboxes and an okay job, but I'd given myself a 2-year runway to quit. And now, granted, there was this little bug of unspecified origin and name that got in the way. I'd actually did move my job to part-time to start working for myself as a musician. And then that kind of killed most of that. But in that same vein, a year later, I was in charge of an entire vault for a bank. Like, so I'd made enough right choices that I'd got myself out of the situation I was in and into a different situation.
Right.
And I learned how much I hated that situation even more than the one I was in. But like I said, you don't make the right decision all the time. Sometimes you need more data to creep in to realize it's not the right decision.
That's true. I mean, that's true. I was, in the retail world for a long time. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to switch gears. And I got into insurance claims for a car insurance company. And man, I hated that. Like it made me physically ill, like every day. I would go sit out in the car and eat lunch because I didn't want to stay at my, cubicle. And while I was in the car, I would just be like, I don't know, should I take a nap? Like I feel awful, right? And it's like, drag myself back in and then keep working. And so I went back to the retail world after that. I did car claims for like 8 months because I hated it, man. It was soul sucking, horrible environment. But it taught me a lot, right? I learned a whole lot of things I don't like and why I don't like them. Right. And so that helps you to kind of shape the future that you do want, the more that you know what you don't. It's kind of like house shopping. I mean, if you've only lived in apartments, how do you know what kind of house you want? Right. You might hate the floor plan or whatever. You've got to rent a couple of houses, maybe kind of see what you like and don't like, live in it a little bit. You got to hang out with somebody before you know if you want to live with them, like relationships and stuff, right? If you get married and then move in together in a house, well, you don't know if you can live together yet. Maybe you should live in an apartment first, or, you like just stuff like that. And so it's, I'm absolutely with you, man. Data points and building the future based on your past experiences. That's what it's all about. It's why your life comes together after you're 30, 35, not when you're 16.
But maybe if I'd had this book at 16, I would have had the data points to make those decisions better, quicker, instead of working on this crap in my 40s.
Not to say not to have good information, but you do have a little bit of trial and error anyway. And gosh, me and my wife, I mean, we're very much like okay, I see what you're saying. I appreciate you warning me not to do this. I think I'm going to do it anyway, just to see what happens.
Well, and there is always, you never know what works for you that might not work for somebody else. We're not all the same people, and we don't, whatever parts are malleable and able to be worked with. Like sometimes there are just parts of ourselves that we didn't even see, we don't know, we don't understand, and we can't change.
I'm just very stubborn, right? And that's probably not ever changing.
I'm pretty arrogant, so those things are also difficult to change in their own right.
All good. Okay, so you read Cialdini, you started to make some of these strivings over time, got some more data, learned some more about kind of who you are and all of these things, and so enter Iron Age marketing. Like, how did you get into marketing of all things?
Well, so that's actually interesting. It all comes back to podcasting because most things these days do come back to podcasting. I've been a musician my whole life. It's always been a grind trying to get people out to market to people, find your audience. I had a lot of years failing at that as a musician, just to be completely upfront and honest. And then I started podcasting, and it was different. We're online, things worked a little differently, but I'm coming up with the same kinds of problems. And so, I as part of trying to fix that, the solution for me was Cialdini and every sales book I could get my hands on. Like, I'm just reading and reading. This coincides with discovering libertarianism, Austrianism, a whole lot of paradigm shifts all at once in my life. And Iron Age marketing happens as a company, as a thought. I'm starting to actually like go out and actively look through my friends' network because there are things I can do for people because I'm learning these skills to help myself and to grow my own endeavors. Can I start practicing on people basically and getting, work out there? And then this idea happens kind of simultaneously in the world of media because companies like Marvel and DC and Disney are screwing up so badly. And now we have so many tools in our fingertips to like do it ourselves. You put out your own book. I'm putting out my own book. We're not limited in the ways we used to be in the publishing, like with the big three, I think it is, whatever it is. This idea came about called the Iron Age of Media. And as a fan of Dungeons and Dragons and comic books and all the nerdier things in life, to me, it was just the culmination of like this period where we're talking about people are fed up with corporations. They're fed up with all this. And so they're just going to go and do it themselves. Well, now I have all these skills and I'm trying to utilize them to, help other people. And then I find this group of people, these Iron Age people, these Iron Age media people, that like, yeah, they're all doing and making their own stuff. But sometimes they're not selling to a lot of people because a lot of these guys are just like me. They're 40-year-old dads. They work factory jobs. They, the only thing that they have in their life is to this comic book idea that they had, or, this novel that they wrote, whatever it is. But they didn't come across that intermediary point that I did. They didn't read Cialdini. They didn't read all those other sales books. They didn't have a drive and a desire to go out and like really get deep into the psychology of human beings. And so, you'll go on Twitter and some of these guys like, I don't know how you've sold as many books as you have, given some of like your interactions with people and like what you're doing, and like you've gotten really lucky so far. But I think you could get luckier if you had a little bit of strategy. And so the idea kind of started with me wanting to help these people. Ultimately, what it boils down to is, you go out and you find the people that you can help. You find the people that can help you. And the first thing I learned is, well, not a lot of these people have a lot of money to pay me for the services that I can offer. So I need to go and work for other people. And so the original client base kind of expanded, we'll just say. But the goals still remain the same. I still maintain the Iron Age Marketing Podcast directed at small creators. What I really wanted to accomplish with the book is that, like, I can help a lot of these people, but, like, they can't really afford the help that I have. So what if I can go out and make something really concise and entertaining that they can take in and get themselves, like, market themselves to a point where they can afford to pay me. Like, I want them to be doing well enough that they have the money to have somebody, with my expertise come in and help them take it next level to 10x it, whatever cliche euphemism you want to use. And so the idea for this book kind of started coming around. I started talking about it to some of my marketing friends. Like, that's the most genius idea I've ever heard. And so we didn't mention it at the beginning, but there actually is a subtitle called "And Live a Better Life in General."
Okay, wonderful.
Because so much of the things that I learned in marketing were pivotal at changing me at like a human level. And I like to share some of that as well.
Yeah.
Like when I talk to half people on my podcast, so many of them that I talk to, I'll get like responses like, well, I became a writer because I didn't want to talk to people. These are seriously introverted people, and they live their life as an introvert. They don't have to. One of the other things we haven't talked much about today, and how I know that the introvert extrovert thing it's a tenuous idea at best in my world, is that whole life. I would tell you I'm an introvert. Like, I do like my alone time quite a bit. But that doesn't mean I don't crave and love being on stage in front of people. And that would be some type of an oxymoron, or type of like contradiction of personality. If it wasn't like, these are conscious decisions that we all make. Yes, you can be an introvert if you want to be an introvert, but you want to step outside of that paradigm. Like, when I'm Nick on stage, I'm a different version of Nick. I'm stage Nick. I'm the Nick that goes up and wants to chew on the microphone and have a grand old time jumping around loose. But that's not, doesn't necessarily mean I need to be that Nick all the time. So much of it's about choices and choosing whether or not you want to be that guy. If you think you really want to, if you think you could be you and get the things that you want out of life, well, then here's some of the things that helped me break free of those paradigms that were holding me back.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And I, way before I read marketing books or Cialdini or, any of this stuff, or discovered Austrian economics, any of this stuff, back when I used to not read books because public school trained me to hate reading.
Good Lord, do they ever.
And I loved reading. I loved reading books, and then they beat it out of me.
I'll break the fourth wall here, folks. Me and Luke have many 40 and 50-hour audiobooks in our Audible accounts.
That's right. That's right. I did 250 something books in my Audible account, I think now. And so anyway, but back, fourth grade, third grade, etc. That kind of period in my life, I mean, I was still the most introverted person like that I have ever known, basically ever, of all people. and and that was difficult. I don't want to make the claim that like extroversion is the path to success, because it's not necessarily true, right? But just in my fourth grader brain, I was like, man, it kind of sucks. Like, I'm having a pretty bad time in life being so introverted. Not even thinking in terms of the word introversion, but just that kind of conceptualization. And so I made an effort starting about sixth grade. I was gonna become more open, and more able to get out there. And that's the story of my life, that is working on that. And it's been extremely, extremely difficult. But to your point, it was a decision, right? It's a choice. I could have not done that. I work in some cubicle or whatever, and then have some job that I didn't necessarily like, but that paid the bills, that didn't require me to go out and get in front of people and host a podcast and do YouTube videos and all these things. But I didn't want that, so I decided I was going to invest the time and the energy and the, and stress myself out to push through some of these things and shift some of my personality traits in a different direction, right? People might call that masking or whatever, but yeah.
Well, one of the things I learned, you eventually, like when you really get to put this into context, is this is all part of the psychology stuff. Is like when you realize that everyone else in the world is as self-absorbed as you are, and they're paying very little attention to you in most instances. Because if they were paying attention to you, you wouldn't have to work as hard to market yourself. That would just happen naturally. It takes away some of the sting. Like you can do really stupid things in front of people because most of the time they probably won't notice. And the thing that they're really gonna remember is when you do something awesome or something good in front of them. If you remember that movie Hitch, one of the first tenets is be excellent in front of her.
Yeah. I actually did see that movie. You're always bringing up movies I've never seen, and I actually did see that movie.
It was pretty popular. It's Will Smith. I figured that was a safe bet, but the idea it tracks. People see all kinds of crap that's terrible that they just as soon forget. But you do something amazing in front of somebody once, it tends to stick out because we all have a lot of not amazing things in our life.
Yeah. True. I mean, I tell my team, associate yourself with positive experiences. That's how I phrase it. But it's like, if you want to be a good friend to somebody, if you want them to think of you highly, If you're going to be held in high esteem by the people around you, maybe you should do things that are good, right, around those people. So that could be, hey, let me buy you a cup of coffee for no reason other than I just want to. But it could be all kinds of things, right? Like invitation to some kind of event. It could be just, I want to talk to you on the phone. Do you have some time? I'd like to hear what you have going on in your life, like choosing to spend time with people. And I could go on a whole tangent right now, and I'm gonna rein myself in and not do it. But it seems like people spend less and less and less and less time with people. We do social media instead of calling people. And so what's the solution to that if you're trying to make an impact and, influence in the world? Well, it's to call people. It's to do the thing that nobody else is doing, right? Like, hey, I could talk to anybody, or I could post to my whole social media audience right now, but I'm not. I want to talk to you, right? And that's what we're doing, right? We're
Well, as I say, it's funny is that, like, in a world of social media, I know you, like me, can't stand social media, and it's amusing that we're both guys that went out of our way to start podcasts so we can just have active conversations with people that we wanted to talk to. Um, uh, Probably one of the reasons we are such good friends in that respect. But something else that I want to add, and this kind of it gets back to what we are just talking to, but, like, there's that, they always say you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time around. Well, when you start living life consciously, making choices, and, like, actively participating, you do start choosing to hang out with different people, and you're like realizing, what am I getting out of this relationship? Like, what are you getting out of it? Like, is this relationship working out for the both of us? Sometimes there are people that, like, are willing to let you hang out with them, and you realize you're the weak link. And you're like, well, I really should start pulling my weight in this relationship, because, if not, they're not going to hang out with me longer. You start looking at, I guess to me, it's, you start looking at the economics of relationships, and the the laws of economics tend to work no matter where you place them, in my experience. And so you should pay attention to them, folks. But you tend to find yourself surrounding yourself with more engaged people. I don't I don't want to sit and listen to a bunch of people talking and talking about all the great things they're going to do in the world that are never doing any of them. They're not even trying. I'd rather hang out with someone that's taken a lot of swings and misses than someone who's just, next year, that'll be the year I try and do that thing that I've wanted to do my whole life. So when you start hanging out with people and giving time to people that only go out and take care, like, okay, I'm going to do this, and they actually follow through on it. Maybe they fail, but they follow through. You tend to want to spend time around more of those people, and kind of only those people, because the other kinds of people, it's like, I don't have the energy to lift you up for you. Like, you need to hold yourself, because you're weighing me down. You're weighing everyone around you down. Like, I want to be the guy that has enough of a backbone, enough of a world that I can help hold others up around me. I don't ever want to be the guy that's, like, the anchor on somebody. I want to be the flotation device that somebody's trying to get to know.
I I love it, man, because I love seeing people succeed, right? And in my client conversations, so it's like, if we're jiving, if we have a lot in common and we want to have more conversations, if you like talking to me, if it's like a first time client call or something, it's like, if you like talking to me, I want to talk to you more. This is great. We have a good energy, and pretty quickly if somebody is a creator or if they're more passive, kind of to your point, right? And so it's like, when you have a room of creators together, you got 10, 15 people that get stuff done, then it's like there's so many opportunities to collaborate, and things will actually happen, and it starts working faster and faster. And there's just like the energy boost is ridiculous.
It's like, even when the ego kicks in there in, like, a healthy way, it's like, well, oh, I want to be the guy, but I'm not going to be the guy without fighting to be the guy. And so a little friendly competition can do wonders for everybody in that room as they try and push and try and be the guy. And you hope, and it's funny is that if as long as you're not one of those people that gets into the fixed pie fallacy where, oh, well, there's only so much to go around. Well, no, we can grow this. We can make more for everybody. Then there's no problems with everybody competing and trying to do better. All you're doing is making the world better. You're adding value. Period.
Yeah. Yeah. No, man, I love it. I love it. So, okay, we've kind of talked, I'm looking at the clock. I'm seeing how long we've kind of been going for, right? So tell me about the book a little bit, kind of, what's your prospects for that? Do you have a release window? How do people learn more?
I am shooting for November, and I believe it's roleplayersguide-to-marketing.com, and you can sign up to get yourself on the list. And, it's a marketing book, but at the same time, as we know about any type of marketing or sales book, there's always at least one chapter in there on self, because you're one of the biggest factors in whether or not you can sell things. How you feel about things absolutely will hold you back or accelerate what you can do in that department. So, if you're interested in kind of like what I talk about, marketing in general, you can check out the podcast at rnhmarketing.com. Or if you need help with your own creative project, and I've got lots of stuff I've picked up over the years of being a creative person, music, audio, video, whatever. And I absolutely love, like, what's one of the joys of doing this is helping other creative people succeed with their creative endeavors.
Awesome. Yep. And I wouldn't be able to do all the stuff that I do without your help, man. So, I'm a case study if anyone has questions about that stuff. Because, especially when I'm meeting somebody new for the podcast, right? Somebody I haven't talked to before, and that's going to be our first conversation. Sometimes you can kind of tell that they can't comprehend how we can possibly do as much as we're doing. And it's like, well, hey, it's not me. I got Nick. I mean, I got Crystal. We got people working on things. It's not just me.
He's got a team that I'm mooching people for my team from his team. And now we got like this weird half team, his team, my team, group, collective. I don't know what you call it, but
it's a creative empowerment, something. I don't know. We got to come up with an acronym, but yeah, it's awesome.
The beauty of it is it's people trying to do for themselves. I like being around people that, not say they're not happy with where they are, but people that, I think I can do better. And I'm going to try to do better.
Yeah. I love my life, but I always want to improve things, and so
I'd like to be a little further out in the woods, right?
That's right. No, but anything else that I didn't ask you, Nick, that you want to make sure we talk about before we wrap up here?
No, I think we covered what we needed to cover. Hopefully the audience, gains from this. Once again, I recommend the book Influence by Robert Cialdini to anyone. It is bigger to me than a marketing book. But even if you want to learn just marketing, it's really good for that too. It's a staple. It has been for 30, 40 years at this point.
Yeah. I don't know the publishing year either, but yeah, it's been around, but there's a reason that it stays on those essential reading lists for marketing and all kinds of stuff. And honestly, that was a springboard for me for just getting more into psychology and reading Carl Jung and all these other things too. It's like, wow, that's really, really interesting stuff. And I didn't think I would care that much, but here we are. And so, yeah, very, very powerful stuff. We'll link to Cialdini's book below, as well as to ironAgeMarketing.com and your book website and all those good things if you're so inclined to check those out. Thank you all so much for watching. Nick, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to The Price of Time, hosted by Luke Tatum. Subscribe to us for more episodes. Check the description box below to learn more about our guest. And if you found this episode valuable, please share it with a friend.